Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Authentic and Unfamous Show. And this is episode 2 of the Authentic and Unfamous Show. I'm just about to bring on my guest, Dr. Kien Vuu. This is on Facebook Live, so obviously we're still experimenting with a few different functions and attempting to basically get everyone that we want on the show. Dr. Kien has just arrived, and I will be at our Facebook Live function right now. So going to be really, really interesting as we proceed. Hello, Dr. Kien Vuu. How are you?
Hello, Dr. Avi. Doing well, doing well.
Excellent.
So let me see if I can share this.
Okay. No worries. While you're doing that, Ken, I'll just give a bit of an introduction to the audience that's joined the show at the moment. So hello, everyone, to Australia, Malaysia, USA, and everywhere else around the world that's just joining in to watch the show. My name is Dr. Avi Ratnanason. I am the host of the Authentic and Unfamous Show, and my guest today is Dr. Kien Vuu. Ken is a interventional cardiologist from the UCLA Health system. He is also a TEDx speaker. Recently did a TED Talk, which went absolutely gangbusters in the US, and he was also on the Doctor's Show, which is a major TV production that talks about health topics in the US as well. So it's a real honor to have Dr. Kien here today. Before we jump into it, I guess just to talk about the purpose of the show again, the Authentic and Unfamous Show is really to feature a lot of those unsung heroes out there in the world who are really authentic personalities doing great things in the world. And it's a real honor to have Dr. Kien here today to talk about some of the issues around health, patient experience, how to achieve success, and so on and so forth. So, Dr. Kien, thanks for joining the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Just happy to be here. So I just wanted to make a quick little correction so that the people at UCLA don't get upset with me. I'm an interventional radiologist. So I do use a lot of imaging technology. I treat a lot of cancer patients, and some people use the term interventional oncology. I do treat some peripheral leg disease as well, and so we do share some overlap with the interventional cardiologist, but not a cardiologist by training.
Sorry, yes, I meant interventional oncologist. That's right. And thanks for correcting me. This is all about what the show is all about, just getting raw and straight to the truth. No bullshit here. Excellent. Well, look, again, as I said, what we really want to do today in the next hour is to really share with the audience a lot of your story, because I'm really fascinated about your story and your journey as a doctor, but also someone who suffered from chronic disease and how you overcame some of those experiences. And you shared this on TEDx. You shared some of your insights on the Doctor's Show. I guess, do you want to just give a bit of a background in terms of, what made you choose medicine in the first place, and why did you want to become a doctor?
Sure. Well, as a kid growing up, I don't know if some people have seen the TED Talk, but I was a boat refugee to America, and so I spent 8 months on a boat, another 3 months in a refugee camp, and grew up in a very poor area of Chinatown, Los Angeles. And growing up, I had actually wanted to do something bigger than being a doctor. I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be in the media, to have a voice that's impact many people. I mean, my heroes were like Robin Williams, Tony Robbins, and the like. And, just kind of growing up, that's something I aspired to be. Medicine was always kind of like on the background. And, for my parents, my immigrant parents, they certainly really desired for me. They felt that I was a healer, and they definitely really pushed for that. And just along the way, that's something that I always did want to give back to them. They sacrificed so much. My dad got thrown in jail when we tried to escape Vietnam years ago. And so, just knowing their sacrifice, I wanted to be able to give something back to them. And biology was something that always came pretty easy to me. And without thinking about it too much and without being conscious about it, I just kind of went down the path. And certainly I wanted to help people. But you know, there was a calling even very at a young age to do more speaking or to be, you know, doing more media work. But biology did come easy, and once I kind of fell into med school, you know, you don't think about it. You just go through the training process, and don't get me wrong, there is nobility in terms of being able to help people and really give back in that way. I mean, I do find that you know, being a doctor is one of the most sacred things, because you have that bond with your patients and you're able to help them in such a deep way. But as somebody who's going through the training process, sometimes it's very difficult to be fully conscious about what you want in your life, right? I mean, you know, I don't know what medical school is like in Australia, but, you know, you jump into medical school, you're just hit with like lots of material you need to learn, and you're just going process by process through process without really asking yourself, okay, well, how am I sleeping? How am I eating? Am I doing what I really, you know, want to do? And you just sort of, you know, ask these mentors, and these mentors might not, they've gone through the same process, might not be very conscious about why they chose what they chose to do also. But, you know, I ended up being an interventional radiologist and did a lot of oncology work. Certainly very happy because, you know, there are some accomplishments I've done in the conventional medical field that I'm very proud of.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, sometimes when you're going through life, you got to stop and pause and ask yourself what you're really meant, you know, to be doing, you know?
Yeah. So this is really interesting, right? And this is why we connected and why we had these things in common, because we both practice medicine. I left my career in medicine early on, but maintained a career in healthcare, which, as you know, there's so many ways to help people in healthcare. And you and both of us have used the media channel as a channel for helping others as well. But you were very successful in becoming that specialist and becoming that interventional oncologist and working really hard at that, and also saving a lot of lives in that space. What would you say is and then branching out your career, what would you say are some of the secrets to your success in becoming that specialist, right? Because there's a lot of people that, you know, and people on the show that are still early on in their career or in their 20s and 30s that sort of maybe are thinking about doing different things. What were some of the traits that you had that made you successful?
I think just going through the process, you know, I think doing anything in life is very important to have good mentors, and, you know, seeing what you want as kind of a done deal and having the right people guide you through. And so I had really good mentors, and when I had chosen radiology and then subsequently interventional radiology, I've had people who really show me what it's like to be a clinician deeply caring for a patient and being able to use the medicine at that time to be able to do our best to try to, you know, save people's lives or to help people out. And so I think mentors is the utmost importance, you know, having seen people who have lived the life that you want to live or have the career that you want, and just having them guide you through. Then the rest of it is just, you know, knowing your why throughout the process as well. And I would probably say I did know my why, but as I'm evolving, as my consciousness is starting to evolve, you know, things start to shift. And then, you know, here I am doing more media work than interventional radiology.
Wow, that's super interesting. I want to pick on those two reasons there. First one, just around the mentors. And similar to you, I had a few mentors over the years. My dad was a mentor. He was dentistry and very successful in dentistry. He was the president of the World Dental Federation, so that really gave me, you know, a lot of mentorship from a young age. I also had many sort of doctors and other sort of successful people, but I brought on as peers as well. How do you approach a mentor? What do you say to then bring on a mentor? Because I'm sure a lot of people would have just heard you say that and think, oh, well, how do I identify the right mentor, and how do I get them into my life, you know, to help me?
No, certainly. I think just identifying the people that inspire you most. You know, once I decided I wanted to do interventional radiology, I looked out in the community and I said, well, who are the people I want to learn from? And I think, at least in the medical field, if you have a budding student or a budding, resident that really shows a lot of interest. And if your interest is genuine, I think, you know, just reaching out to them. And now it's easier than ever to reach out to people. People have reached out, you know, to me on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, and I think it's easier than ever to be able to do so. Right. I think in the medical field, if you want to reach out to you know, to a doc, it's, you know, you'd be surprised who you can just go out and reach. And then, you know, even within your local community, I'm pretty sure there's probably people in your specialty within the hospital that you're in or within the local region that knows the people that you want to meet. Yeah. Who might not be in your local region. Yeah. Yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, just a few tips and strategies that you talked about, really reaching out to people, even on social media, you found as well. And I've done that, even on, I've used LinkedIn and Facebook. I reached out to you on Facebook, and we have
right.
And you know, these things do work, and sometimes we feel like someone's so important that they're unreachable. But you know, the amount of people I've reached through LinkedIn is amazing. And then the other one you talked about is just having someone local, right? Someone that lives in your area or is close by is also helpful to have that face-to-face kind of mentorship as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, use your networks. I mean, start locally, and everybody who's a few steps ahead of you has the network for the people that are above them as well. So
that's fascinating. The second thing that you talked about, which was the secret for your success, is finding out your why, right? And that's all around understanding your purpose. You know, what are you here for? What are you here to do? When I listen to you, you seem to have real clarity that you wanted to help people from a young age, and that's something I resonate with as well. But how do you figure out exactly how you do that, right? Because you figured out that you wanted to be a doctor, and then at some point you decided it's going to be oncology. And even in the last show, in episode 1, we had Vishal as a guest, and he was a millennial trying to figure out, well, how do I navigate and decide what my purpose is and what's my why? So what did you do to figure that out? Apart from
I always think we are in a constant process of becoming, right? And our whys change over time. You know, I think early on I had a very my why was to want to help people, and then somewhere along the way, I think maybe early on, you know, 8, 9, 10 of, you know, I grew up in a very poor area, and I got bused to an affluent, you know, school. And I remember being made fun of for being an immigrant, for being poor, for the stinky food my mom cooked, all those things. And, you know, then there was a part of me that just started to feel like I was not enough, right? And so a big chunk of my why, you know, kind of growing up in junior high and high school was just to fit in, right? Was just to be enough. And so I came from the why of okay, I'm not happy with my life, I'm not worthy, and that's a very good driving force. But you know, you know, you might get to a point in your life where it's like you'll try to strive for those things, and it's not fulfilling, and it's taking away from your body. And in my case, it took away from my health as well. So that why has changed throughout time, and I think once you start to realign yourself with, you know, I really do believe that we're placed on this planet, you know, 1, to evolve, 2, to really discover ourselves over and over again so that we can become the best version of ourselves, and then to give. So I would just encourage everybody who hasn't found a why yet to know, number 1, the why is going to change as we as we evolve. And 2, when you get there, you just sort of know, because it starts to feel good, right? I always knew that as I was trying to be this doctor that, you know, that spoke around the world, those things, I always still felt, oh my God, you know, do I deserve this? Am I meant to be doing this? And I'm asking those questions less now. Now I really am just starting to be like, wow, it feels really good to speak of health in a new way, and be able to get people to really understand that the access through their health is just for them to really know who they are and live the life that they want.
That's really interesting. These are the wisdom bombs that I always expect to come out on the show. And some of the wisdom bombs that you came up with is the whole you know, understanding that you are constantly becoming your why, and that your why
Right.
is changing
Right.
and evolve. And the third thing you said, it starts to feel good or really comfortable, right?
Right.
Which
Right.
is quite funny. And you know, I remember sort of going off, and for 3 years I left healthcare and got into the film and tech industry, and that's where we have some, you know, some common interests. And at that time, I was very excited about what I was doing, but as I went on doing that, I felt less fulfilled, you know. And then I sort of pivoted back into and founded NHS in healthcare, because the healthcare side and the tech side then gave me more fulfillment as well. So it's that, how do you identify that? I know this seems like a weird question, but a lot of people out there are probably doing a lot of these pieces of work. They've been pressured to take on certain jobs. They're now earning constant salaries. They feel a little bit stuck, maybe. You know, how do you then kind of go, you know, how do you make sure that, okay, if you've got this discomfort, I've got to change? Is there a point or a trigger or something that you had maybe that?
Right. Well, I mean, my trigger point was, you know, here I am, you know, I was, you know, in private practice maybe about 2.5 years ago, and I was working 60 to 80-hour weeks, and certainly helping a lot of people, but I started to see less patients. I was, it was starting to see well, I spent less time with patients, and I started to see just, a lot more volume, and that's the way it's kind of is in the US, right? And I wasn't, really taking care of my body, but I was, kind of accelerating my career. I was doing more speaking on conventional medicine and going up the ranks of the hospital. All the while, I was overweight. I was diabetic. I was hypertensive. I was on tons of prescription medicines, even stuff to help me fall asleep. And so I just started to say, man, I am feeling burnt out. And, I didn't sign up for this,
Right.
Yes, I'm able to stop somebody's bleeding or open somebody's leg artery, but, I'm getting sick. And then I also start to begin to just remember what health is and how these people, I wasn't really able to help them at the core, and it wasn't until a dying patient reminded me about how to live a little bit more consciously, and that really started the path. And for me, I think there's many different ways for people to kind of tap back into who they are, who they are at the core. I've done hypnosis, I've done plant medicines, I've done lots of deep personal development work. And it's really doing that inner work that allows us to, step away from the subconscious programming that we're hypnotized to, to be able to start to feel. So really, I would say if somebody just doesn't feel right, number one, don't beat yourself up. It's that point that your body is just telling you, hey, listen, wake up. These are just symptoms, and these symptoms are a guidepost that you're not doing the thing that you're meant to do in your life. So be grateful for that, and then start taking steps. And I don't think there are any right steps. There's certainly lots of things that I've done that I'll talk about my book coming out later this year. But number one, just recognizing that if something doesn't feel right inside, to be able to step away and start asking yourself, well, what's missing, and where is the alignment not there?
Okay. Look, you've said a number of interesting things, and particularly your conditions around physical health. So you had diabetes, you had hypertension, you were overweight, you were burnt out as a doctor as well, and that's a big problem in the medical industries. A lot of doctors getting burned out.
For sure.
But you look clearly like you've overcome that. You look slim, trim, happy, and I see the work that you're doing. You've clearly turned around quite a bit. So what did you do to kind of look at all these medications that you're taking, your health conditions, but also you tied it back to your mental and emotional health, right? Because sometimes we keep the physical health separate to our mental and emotional health. What did you do to kind of match it all up and figure out, okay, well, what's my next step,
Right. Well, I've done a lot of studying and research in, when I, number one, looked at my sickest patients and then I looked at the high-performing patients. Then I also looked at people who have been able to reverse their chronic disease. And epigenetic tells us that there are 7 key factors that really kind of make up a bioenergetic frequency that we give to all our cells. Diet, movement, sleep, stress, emotional control, your thoughts, beliefs, and mindsets, community relationships, and then having that sense of purpose, right? So all these are inputs that have a certain amount of energy. And I call this, you know, your bioenergetic state or frequency. It's the frequency you give to each one of your cells. You're either telling your cells to thrive and to grow, or you're giving the cells the messages of stress. Now, I would probably say that if you look at each one of these categories, if you could just start to make simple changes in each, you know, what that does is energetically, because all these things are tied together, it will make other things easier and easier to change. For me, it was really kind of just tapping into joy more. So it's tapping into the emotions of joy more. So it's asking myself, all right, well, you know, the 6 to 8 hours a week is not doing anything for me. What are the things that I can be doing that lights me up and gives me joy? And once I started doing more of that, then I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? You're starting to feel good about yourself. Energetically, something's starting to shift. Then it's starting to, you know, then it's easier to make that shift, you know, when you're feeling good about yourself, for you to say, oh, okay, well, why am I here? What am I meant to do? And then when you have that, you're like, wow, I'm waking up and I'm meant to do this. Well, why would I want to eat that shit or put that stuff in my mouth, right? So all those things start to become easier to do, and it's easier to make those lifestyle changes once you're starting to feel good about yourself. But just work on one at a time, because they're all energetically tied together. But I would say the root cause of a lot of those chronic diseases fall within those 7 factors. Again, sleep, diet, exercise, stress reduction, having a community and relationships, and having purpose in your life. All those things are actually the root of a lot of disease. And if those things are off, then, you know, your bioenergetic state or your frequency is low. You're basically telling yourselves, we're in stress and survival state. And what that does is it decreases your immunity, it increases inflammation. And when we know inflammation is actually the key kind of the tying thing for a lot of chronic disease is inflammation, right?
Okay, so that's super interesting. And there's a lot of research around blue zones, which is areas in the planet where people, you know, higher percentage of people live over 100 years. And a lot of the factors for people that live longer in those blue zones are some of the factors that you just talked about, the community and relationships as well being one of them. And I don't think anyone's going to sort of challenge you when you say that, you know, diet, movement or exercise and sleep are really important to overcoming chronic disease. But the ones that people don't talk about a lot is the stuff around purpose, the stuff around community, and having that good community and well-being. And, you know, how do you, I mean, what evidence have you seen around, you know, having purpose and overcoming chronic disease? I believe in the whole fact of, you know, you've got to do joyful work, and the happier you are. I mean, I can resonate with when I'm feeling low sometimes, I just go and buy a pizza and just stuff my face with pizza. Right. So nights in a row. So so how do you?
So there's a colleague of mine over at UCLA, Stephen Cole. All right. He is in the field of psychoimmunobiology and epigenetics. He did a very big study with Barbara Fredrickson around purpose, around something. So he studied people, and they studied whether or not they were more, they tended to have more eudaimonic happiness. And what's eudaimonic happiness? Or that's the joy that you get when you have a deep sense of meaning or purpose in your life, right? And then they also had groups that displayed more traits of hedonic happiness. That's the happiness you get when you have things, right? And what they noticed was external things, right? What he noticed was when they put together these groups, those people that developed high states of eudaimonic happiness, actually, you could see changes in their genes that it has decreased inflammation, increased immunity. And then if you also look at the book from Professor Blackburn of San Francisco, it's on telomeres. I forget the name of that book.
She's
But
Australian, actually.
they, oh, yeah, right.
She
So
won the Nobel Prize. Yeah.
they also show that the telomeres are longer for those people that demonstrate eudaimonic happiness. So the evidence is there. And, you know, this is my thinking of why, you know what, both from a cellular level, from a humanitarian level, we are programmed that way, right? You take a cell, for example, right? A cell is meant to, number one, be the best cell that it is, but it has to work in a community, right? Like a heart cell has to be the very best heart cell to pump blood all throughout the body, right? To be able to get to the lung, and then the lung brings in this oxygen. So the lung cell has to be the best lung cell to now re-deliver the nutrients back to the heart, right? So if a cell decides not to be in a community or not to give back to the community, it becomes what? Cancer, right? I'm going to grow no matter what. And that's who we're meant to be. And I think we are, you know, our DNA really, you know, demonstrates that humanity is meant to evolve, and we're meant to evolve as species working together. And I think that's why, our genes basically gift us with better health when we give back.
Yeah.
And so we don't actually reach our potential for health unless we give back. That's it. So really, the purpose of life really is to find out what we're good at, what lights us up, because those actually make changes in your DNA.
Yeah.
But it's not until you give it away, you know, that's the juju, and that's where you get everything. So number one, just be happy, find out the things that make you happy and joyful, and then be joyful and share that with your community. That's health, my brother.
I love what you're saying there. Now, just a couple of questions. Sal, who's online now, has a question around the reference. Now, you talked about one of the references, or when I say references, the pieces of literature, was the study by Elizabeth Blackburn on telomerases and that connection between the telomerase sort of happiness / purpose and better lifespan. Yeah.
I would probably say, if you guys want references, go ahead and Google Elizabeth Blackburn, Google Stephen Cole, and then Google Barbara Fredrickson, and they do a lot. There's studies around eudaimonic happiness. All right, and eudaimonic happiness is, again, or eudaimonic joy is that joy that you feel around the sense of having purpose.
Yeah, fantastic. I just want to clarify that for the people on the show right now. And you know, the other piece that you talked about is, you know, the ability for us to actually have a better life experience, human experience, happiness, if we're around other cells that are also happy and keep us contented, and so on, right? And so one of the things that is a challenge for us and is sometimes we have family members, sometimes we have friends, and sometimes we have people around us in the workplace that are pretty toxic, right? That make us pretty unhappy on a regular basis. Not my family, I wouldn't say that. But how do you basically then, you know, disassociate yourself from people, and some of these people may be really close to you, and you're forced to work with them on a regular basis. I hear what you're saying around that eudaimonic happiness and keeping centered, but how do you shift from those sorts of networks that are within your, you know, home or work environment on a regular basis?
Right, sure. I think doing a lot of deep personal work, and you just come to the point of this where, you know, and I'm constantly doing the work myself, but, you know, I have to constantly remind myself when I'm getting triggered, because when I get triggered, it's something that's in my own subconscious that is triggering me to feel a certain way. So that's an opportunity for me to heal something, right? And when we start to take responsibility that our emotions, our emotional state can be guarded in such a way that nobody can come in and trigger that anymore, that's when we really master that part of the emotional aspect of what I was talking about. Because emotions are so important. High vibrational emotional states lead to gene expression for better health. And so I think it's doing a lot of that deep personal development work, and then becoming just really conscious that, you know what, at any moment, if we can own that no person, no circumstance, and nothing can take away the joy or or that feeling of happiness and that feeling of gratitude.
Mm.
When we can master that, that will lead to better health for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This applies in two ways. So one, for the people who are at home and have family members or so on that might be triggering them on a constant basis. Maybe that person took something away from them. Maybe that person hurt them in the past. Maybe they've got an argument going on about money or love or other family members. But what you're saying is that just do the own deep personal development work so that you can identify your own triggers of when you get angry, and then try and basically heal them in sort of calming yourself down when you get triggered. What's that work look like for you, Ken, in terms of what do you actually do to calm yourself down when you get triggered, right?
Right. Okay. Well, number one, discovering I'm getting triggered, and I don't necessarily stop myself right away, because sometimes I get triggered, and basically what happens is your subconscious brain starts to work, and then then you're just operating from the subconscious level. So number one, being able to recognize you're getting triggered. And when you can recognize that, if you could just take a few steps away, take a few breaths, and you might need to leave the situation for a little bit, right? And that's okay too. And then just recognize, all right, well, where is this coming from? And like I said, I've done a lot of personal development work, I've done some communication programs and whatnot. We can always, get to root of the issue, but sometimes you have to get yourself out of the situation. But I think it starts with awareness of when, one, you're getting triggered, and two, you have to remove yourself from the trigger, then ask yourself, all right, well, where do I want to be, and how do I want to be? I don't want to be triggered. I want to come from a place of gratitude. I want to come from a place of love, and then I have to recenter myself in that space before I start communicating again. Right.
Okay. So two things is self-awareness and identify, hey, I'm getting triggered, I'm getting angry. Maybe somebody cut me off on the street, and you suddenly get triggered and get angry. But you just have to become aware, hey, I'm getting angry. Two, try to remove yourself from that situation. And then three, calm yourself down, following on from that. What about if it's, and what you're saying is pretty deep, because you're tying this back to chronic health issues. You're saying that if doing these techniques on a regular basis actually helps reduce inflammation, which can exacerbate any chronic health issue, whether that's diabetes, hypertension, and so on.
For sure. Yeah. Right. Like I said, I talk about this in my book, but again, 7 main things, I'm going to repeat them: our diet, our exercise, our sleep, our stress and emotional control. What emotional states do we live at? And then community and relationships and purpose. Now, all those things together, basically has a bioenergetic frequency. You're either at a high vibrational frequency or state, and that tells your cells it's grow and thrive time. I'm going to have better immunity, decrease inflammation, your telomeres are longer, your mitochondria work better. On the other side, you're telling yourself, hey, you know what, there's a saber-toothed tiger maybe coming. You're in a survive and stress state. There's a lot of your autoimmune conditions because your cells are on alert. So autoimmune conditions go up, your immunity goes down, or your inflammation goes up. So all these things are definitely tied together. So if you can work on each one of these things, they are basically the common pathways to a lot of disease, right? Right? Because emphysema, or cardiac disease with atherosclerosis, that's inflammation of the arteries, right? You have COPD or lung disease, that's inflammation in the lungs, right? You've got, all these autoimmune disorders for the joints. What is that? That's inflammation in the joints. The common pathway is inflammation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting, because let's talk about the workplace setting now, okay? Because you've got these emotional triggers, emotional controls. You want to live in that space of joy and gratitude. So one of the tips you're telling people is to actually how to get back to trying to identify joy and gratitude within your life. But also one of the things that is that where people get triggered very often is the workplace, right? And both of us done a lot of work in hospitals. I still train a lot of doctors, nurses, and CEOs and managers in the health system. and help these organizations improve their patient experience, but also their staff experience and their culture. And sometimes you're aware, you've worked in a lot of hospitals, sometimes those cultures can be, sometimes they're lots of joy, love, and we see high patient experience scores, and sometimes they can be toxic. And you know,
Yeah.
in fact, even in Sydney at the moment, some of our hospitals that we're working with, their People Matters scores in their surveys are showing that, you know, the culture's struggling or being challenged at the moment. So what would you say to that? Like, how would you, you know, change the culture in the healthcare environment and the setting? You know, what would they do?
Well, I would probably say, look, I've left some hospitals because there was way too much ego that I didn't feel that at the time I was ready to take on to make those changes. But I think it's really important, number one, for physicians to step out and to recognize the type of culture, you know, within the hospital setting. You know, I know many different hospitals, depending on where you're at, has this, you know, a setting of collaboration and love, but some can be quite toxic. And it really takes physician leaders who, number one, recognize the role of culture and cultural energy to be able to then, you know, get that to spread throughout. But, you know, it certainly comes from, I think, you know, leadership and vision from the people up top to be able to create that. And I think you need, you know, physicians to help, but, you know, any leader up top, all the administrators have to be in line with being able to create this culture that is helpful for all. And unfortunately, you know, I would probably say a lot of hospital, you know, large hospital systems here in the U.S., you know, physician wellness is something that it's like, okay, here's a 1 hour thing and you should be well, but nobody really looks deeper. And I think we need to be able to create those programs within the workplace for you know, all this personal development work for people to be able to improve, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's in the book that I'm writing around the patient experience, certainly one of the areas that we talk about is the well-being of staff, physicians, and so on, contributes to the experience, you know, and to the patient's experience as well, because happy doctors, happy staff, happy doctors, happy patients, or happy staff, happy patients, and vice versa. And if you have health professionals that are unhealthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, then the experience that people receive in the healthcare systems, in the clinics, and so on, would also be poorer. So there's really a cycle, a vicious cycle that goes on, that if we can change that around, we can turn that into a virtuous cycle of well-being, better experience, and so on. So it makes a lot of sense in terms of what you're saying. What is your, I suppose, in terms of helping people out there, I guess all these principles can be applied in the workplace as well. Is that right? Do you think that in the corporate workplace or in the sort of small business environment, can these same principles be applied in those environments as well?
Can you repeat probably the last 15 seconds again, only because our connection was a little choppy for a second.
Oh, okay. So I was just saying that some of the techniques that you're talking about in terms of gaining more emotional control through self-awareness, through bringing love, joy, and gratitude, can these techniques, would they apply in the workplace, in the corporate workplace, in the small business workplace? Would they also be effective in those environments?
Yeah, well, I think this is something that should be applied to all workplaces, small, big, you know, whatever. And I think it really takes a group of conscious leaders to have to, number one, make this a priority. You know, if the priority is profits only, you know, and if you're only, you know, looking at the wellness of your employees as lip service, and if they're just, you know, a number in your company, then you're not really doing that justice. But I know there's a lot of conscious companies that are out there, you know, including places like, you know, Mind Valley, for example, that really looks for the 360 well-being of all their employees. And that's the approach you really need to take, because, you know, for you to grow as a corporation, you need people who can grow with you. And you have to take responsibility as a leader to want people to become the best version of themselves. Then they could give their best, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I ask that is because obviously some people in our audience are not from healthcare backgrounds. They're more from the sort of
Sure.
corporate professional background. But obviously, we want to share the insights and make it translate across, all our different audiences from the different countries. I suppose in terms of, some of your achievements, I suppose what would be, and we've got a few minutes left for the show, but what would be your sort of, I suppose, some of the key take-home messages in terms of thoughts and beliefs, right? Because you said that one of the key things around improving performance, improving health, is the thoughts and beliefs of the person. Now, a lot of us have thoughts and beliefs that are programmed for a lifetime. Our parents told us this. Our sort of, this, we got told this by our mentors throughout our career. Our friends. You were born in Vietnam, then you came to U.S. I was born in Malaysia, lived in UK and Australia. So we've brought in all these thoughts and beliefs from other places. How do you shift that? What do you do to improve that?
There's certainly a lot of work that's out there, hypnosis. If you guys are familiar with the work of Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, there are some, there's some work around, called Psych K, a lot of personal development programs that just get you to number one, just see that there's possible other beliefs out there to adopt, that you don't have to take on the beliefs that were handed to you. Then the next thing is going to be actually adopting them at a cellular level. And that could be a little tricky. And that takes a lot of deeper work. For me, I've used some hypnosis, and, I've also used some plant medicines to go really deep to be able to kind of shift some of that consciousness within me. So you talk about, achievements, everything that I thought would make me happy, or certain achievements. And to me, I would probably say that the greatest achievement in my life right now is putting my house on the market. Because what it actually says to me is it tells me that I'm really ready to make a move that is more in line with who I am as a person. I'm selling my house to really kind of invest more in myself. And so and just recognizing that, here's my beliefs now, is we're all meant to just evolve. There's no experience in my past that doesn't, contribute to who I'm becoming now. So,
So that's really interesting. You just dropped this massive bomb here about you selling your house to pursue some personal development. So to some people that would seem like a big sacrifice, because you're taking something away in order to invest in something new. Can you share what that new thing's going to be, and why that's more important to you than having a nice, because I've seen pictures of your house, it's this beautiful place in LA. Why is that personal growth and development more important to you than having that physical material object of an investing house?
I walk into that house. It's got great views of the lake, and it does bring me some joy. But number one, it's, for me to upkeep that house, oh my God, it was such a pain. It was like, I was a one guy. There was, 3 bedroom, 3 bath. And I was just taking care of house guests, all the time. But the thing is, this is most important was, I had that, but there was still no fulfillment inside. Right. And I had the house, I had the car, and not only was I not fulfilled, I had all those chronic diseases. And I think the energy of that, so here's the other thing. When you look at the study from Stephen Cole and Barbara Fredrickson, they noticed that eudaimonic happiness leads to increased immunity, decreased inflammation. What they noticed that those people that have higher sense of hedonic happiness, all right, or those external material things, they actually notice slightly increased inflammation and slightly decreased immunity. And my theory around that is, if those are the things that make you happy, generally you go through a lot of stress trying to attain those things to be happy. Right? So you get them, but you're working your butt off to try to get them, which reminds me of a Dalai Lama quote, because he had said, one of the interesting things that he remarked was most interesting about man was that man is willing to, what's the word? man is willing to give up his health in order to make money, and then uses money to recuperate his health. And that's
right.
exactly where I was, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I think this, if you can invest in yourself and invest and master all those things, put emotional joy and really start to contribute, the abundance will follow. So that's the intuitive thing, that the most abundance you'll ever get is once you get to the place where your inner empire is so clear and full of joy and gratitude that once you start to give, you're going to receive so much more in return. And so to me, you know, don't get me wrong, when I first put it out in the market, I'm like, what am I doing? I mean, you know, it's not like I have a set plan, but I do believe that I have this belief that I think, you know, based on some of the studies and the work and the message I want to share, really allows people to be, number one, I hope they can access that their health is really more in their hands than they think, and they don't have to rely on prescription medicines or feel like they have to age feeling tired, right? Because we have power in that.
Yeah. So, you know, Ken, this is really interesting what you're saying. I mean, a couple of things that you've highlighted here is that, you know, the health of our physical health is dependent on a lot of our emotional and mental health. A lot of that emotional and mental health is controllable by ourselves through greater self-awareness and understanding what triggers this, and becoming more self-aware when we trigger, and then having some practices around joy and gratitude and becoming more joyful and more grateful for everything we have, because the studies have shown that actually shows that we can potentially reduce our inflammation but also live longer. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the key things you've also said is that and this is the concept of eudaimonic happiness, which I'm going to study so much more about the eudaimonic happiness now, because that's a term I hadn't heard. But the other piece you said is that the external, the factors or material things that give us external happiness, the pursuit of them or the study of them shows that that can also increase in the people that had a lot of that physical wealth and objects actually had greater inflammation and were less healthy. Right.
And I want to clear up a few things. It's not those material things on its own that are bad, because I think somebody who's done very well, like, you know, a few of my heroes will have a lot of abundance, and those things aren't that. But if you are pursuing those things to give yourself happiness, if you're pursuing those things because they're you know, you've got so much pain inside that you need these external things to make you happy, that's going to drive the stress in your life. Right. So in of themselves, those material things are not bad. I think it's just the pursuit of them for, you know, for replacing something that you're missing inside. That's what drives the disease. Now, I do believe that once you tap into why you are here, you're going to be wealthy beyond belief. Because things will just start to flow into your life, because you can just now give you know, your authentic self-expression.
Thank you for clarifying, because I don't have to give up the search for the penthouse now. I'll just keep going.
Right.
As long as I do it for the right reasons. Then that's the way to do it. Look, Ken, thank you so much for your time. It's been a fantastic show. We seem to be getting a lot of good feedback, lots of hearts and likes popping up on the side here. So I'm really, really happy for that. Is there any final comment that we want to share, that you want to share to the people out there watching the show today, before I wrap up?
Not really. I mean, if you haven't seen the TED Talk, I appreciate any comments on the TED Talk, but, you know, just placed very simply, you know, I think the reason we are here is just to feel joy, to be happy, to have fun, and to do those things. That's why we are here. And then if we could just do that and share that with as many people around us as possible and share that, that's it. That's it. Just keep it simple. That's all I want to do, is keep it simple.
Let's keep it simple. As long as you think of those 7 factors, those simple ones matter. And look, thanks so much. That's been absolutely fantastic. Just to wrap up, I think what would be great, Ken, if either you and I put that link from the TED Talk on the chat box here, that would be great. We will also, to everyone who's on the show today, this recording, all going well, we will put back up on the page. Ken will share it. I will share it with our audience out there as well. You know, as we said, Ken and I really are passionate about just helping everyone out there. We put a lot of our own time into these sorts of productions, and really want to help people in a different way from our medical careers, that we were involved in different ways, but to help people in a different way and directly as well. So if you do get some benefit out of it, I'd love for you to feed that back on the show and on the links, and just tell us how this had helped you, because that then inspires people like myself, Ken, and the people that are in our networks to do more of this kind of work and to help more people as well. So thanks very much, Ken. Very, very grateful for your time, brother. It's been absolutely fantastic. I hope these people, the video helps a lot of people out there on the planet, both in healthcare and outside of healthcare, and people who are having those career and health issues on a day-to-day basis as well. So all the best to everybody out there, and lots of love from me, Dr. Avi, and lots of love from
Dr. Kien. Bye-bye now.
Kien Vuu. Bye from everyone. Bye. Bye. Bye, Ken.
Bye.